can't, Leonard. Not after what I've done. I won't let you.
Don't be silly.
Unveiling the juiciest secrets of Tinseltown. Dive into 50 jaw-dropping scandals Hollywood desperately swept under the red carpet. From illicit affairs to shady cover-ups, this expose is your backstage pass to the scandalous underbelly of showbiz. Number 50. Death of producer Thomas Ince. Famed silent producer Thomas Ince, known as the father of the Western, loved boating. It was a cherished hobby that he incorporated into several of the more than 100 movies he made. In his obituary, the New York Times even reported that he once ran away from home to sign onto a ship's crew. Luckily, his parents stopped him. They thought acting was a more solid career choice for the boy. Needless to say, when the celebrated newspaperman and member of the American aristocracy, William Randolph Hearst, invited him on a jaunt on his yacht Oneida in November of 1924, it must have seemed like the perfect way to celebrate his 44th birthday. An A-list group of Hollywood producers and stars enjoying only the best food and prohibition-be-damned drinks on a fancy 200-foot-long sailboat off the coast of California? What could go wrong? That trip would come to overshadow the filmmaker's legacy and tarnish those on the boat with the lingering stain of scandal. After one day at sea, Ince was quickly evacuated back to shore. He died shortly after. While his cause of death was by all accounts accurately reported, heart troubles, the actions of those left behind could fill a manual on how to accidentally create a fake scandal that will tarnish your reputation. Since that day, rumors have swirled suggesting that, rather than dying after a night of overindulgence, Ince was murdered. Number 49. False stories about actress Clara Bow. Daisy DeVoe, former secretary of silent film star Clara Bow, published numerous unsubstantiated scandal stories about Bow. Though DeVoe was eventually indicted for stealing from her former employer, the combination of studio pressure to resume work and the emotional stress from the stories led to Bow's retirement soon after DeVoe's trial. Number 48. Actress Patricia Douglas raped at a party. In the late 1930s, MGM was the greatest of all the Hollywood studios, the famous place for having more stars than there were in the heavens. Patricia Douglas was not one of them. Instead, she was a young wannabe, a girl who lived with her mother and had never had any sexual encounter, until the fateful night when she was invited to take part in what she thought was an upcoming movie. Aspiring actress Patricia Douglas was raped at a Hollywood party where she worked as a hostess. She went public about the attack and MGM smeared her, effectively ending her career. In 2003, Douglas shared her story in Vanity Fair magazine, and in 2007, she appeared in a documentary film, Girl 27. In fact, along with dozens of other underage women, she was being brought in to entertain hundreds of salesmen who had flocked to Los Angeles for an MGM convention. Cigar smoke swirled, champagne bottles were popped, and by the end of the evening, Douglas, then a 20-year-old virgin, was the victim of rape. The California State Court dismissed her suit without prejudice, meaning it wasn't a matter for state court. Patricia went to federal court. She did everything she could. She tried every possible legal recourse. Douglas was shattered. Number 47. Pee Wee Herman arrested for public masturbation. On July 26, 1991, Paul Reubens, the star of the children's television show Pee Wee's Playhouse, was arrested when an undercover detective discovered him masturbating in an adult video theater in Sarasota, Florida. The undercover detective was part of a law enforcement raid on the South Trail Cinema in Sarasota. Reubens was 38 at the time and living in Studio City, California. He was one of 3 people arrested inside of the South Trail Cinema that day. After posting a $219 bail, he was released from the Sarasota jail the same night. Later, a deputy sheriff and friend of Reubens was suspended for loaning him the $40 he needed to post bail. The arrest sidetracked his career for a number of years before he appeared in various TV shows such as 30 Rock and The Blacklist. Number 46. The mysterious death of George Reeves. On June 16, 1959, actress Phyllis Coates woke up about 4:30 a.m. to a very strange phone call. The person on the other end of the line was a woman named Toni Mannix. She sounded very disturbed and was hyperventilating as she rasped, "The boy is dead. He's been murdered." This kind of phone call would not have been out of the ordinary for Lois Lane, the character Coates famously played on TV. But not even Lane could have imagined that Mannix was referring to the death of George Reeves, the original Superman. The 45-year-old actor had been known across the nation as Superman for 8 years. But while some may have considered the hero to be a dream role, rumors of a Superman curse began with Reeves' own career. Dissatisfied with the one-dimensional character and his low salary, Reeves had grown tired of the job. What's more, he was struggling with several relationships in his personal life. Because of this, it was widely assumed at the time that the former Superman had died by suicide. But some people speculated that George Reeves was murdered. The star's suicide would have been gossipy enough on its own, but it was the rumors that emerged afterwards that made it such a talking point. Most notably, Reeves was said to be having an affair with the wife of Eddie Mannix, an infamous and notorious Hollywood fixer. It was even alleged that Mannix's spouse confessed on her deathbed that her husband had Reeves killed in an act of revenge. Number 45. Gloria Grahame keeps it in the family. Gloria Grahame won an Academy Award for 1952's The Bad and the Beautiful, but her personal life ended up ruining her professional one. The day after she divorced from her first husband, Stanley Clements, she tied the knot with Nicholas Ray, following an affair that began on set and ended up with Grahame falling pregnant to avoid the societal shame of bearing an extramarital child. However, her career was done irreparable damage when Ray is rumored to have walked in on Grahame cheating on him with his own 13-year-old son. If that wasn't scandalous enough, she married for a third time after divorcing Cy Howard. Her fourth spouse was the very same stepson she'd allegedly been unfaithful with for a decade previously. Number 44. Spade Cooley murders his second wife. Spade Cooley was one of the biggest names in country music, who appeared in movies and TV shows while selling records by the bucket load. What most people don't know was that he struggled with the associated fame, leading to an increasing sense of paranoia and a short temper, which led him to snap under the belief his second wife, Ella May, was having an affair. Cooley assaulted her so viciously and for such a prolonged period of time that she tragically died as a result of her injuries. He was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison in August 1961. Number 43. J. Edgar Hoover's secret FBI files. It used to be the realm of fiction that the government kept tabs on its most famous residents, until it transpired that J. Edgar Hoover had been doing exactly that after assembling files on Hollywood's biggest names. The files, which were kept in Hoover's back pocket, was a potential blackmail tool, should he ever find himself convinced that the dirty laundry contained within, whether it was true or not, needed to be aired. Number 42. The Black Dahlia Murder. One of the most famous unsolved murders in pop culture history, the discovery of Elizabeth Short's mutilated and dismembered body shocked the nation. But the tabloid frenzy grew so all-encompassing that Orson Welles found himself named as a potential suspect. The press and public alike combed through every scrap of information they could, finding the harrowing crime, with accusations being leveled towards a number of potential killers, although the real culprit has never been found. Number 41. Tallulah Bankhead in general. Tallulah Bankhead during her career on stage and screen, where she became so used to scandal it became a key part of her persona. She was open in discussing her regular use of alcohol and cocaine, and at a time when society was significantly more prudish than it is now. Bankhead told an interviewer she agreed to star in 1932's Devil and the Deep because she wanted to have sex with Gary Cooper. While she was romantically linked to many of the biggest names in Hollywood, both male and female, she was never too far from scandal but wore it like a badge of honor. Number 40. Maureen O'Hara is caught necking. The star of Miracle on 34th Street and The Quiet Man had her name dragged through the mud when gossip magazine Confidential ran a story claiming the actress had been seen necking with a man in the audience of Grauman's Chinese Theater back in November 1952. The manager purportedly had to throw them out because their heavy petting was too unsavory to allow. Number 39. Robert Mitchum does time for the devil's lettuce. Thanks to the reefer madness propaganda of the early 20th century, marijuana use was perceived to be on par with being a serious drug addict. That stigma led to big trouble for actor Robert Mitchum. In 1948, Mitchum was working on a joint in a friend's private home when police arrived and arrested him, homeowner Lila Leeds, and several others for drug possession. Cops had apparently been watching both Mitchum and the home, described as a reefer resort, for months before springing into action in the hopes of nailing a high-profile narcotics arrest. Number 38. Veronica Lake's hairstyle might cost us the war. Few actresses did more to influence mid-century fashion than Veronica Lake, the sultry star who favored a hairstyle that fell over one eye. It started as an accident but became a trademark for the actress. Because so many women admired Lake, they adopted the same style. That became a problem when women entered the workforce in increasing numbers during World War II. The look was thought to be hazardous in factory jobs. Reports circulated of airplane factory workers getting scalped as a result of their dues. The government went to Paramount Pictures in the hopes Lake might be receptive to changing her hairstyle. She did, and even appeared in a short film promoting a new look. Number 37. Lee Tracy urinates on the Mexican army. Lee Tracy, the second lead in the film Pancho Villa, had a bit too much to drink one night. Driven awake by a military parade just outside of his hotel room, an inebriated Tracy stumbled to the window and began yelling and urinating toward the assembled cadets below. The Mexican government sought him out for arrest, but Tracy managed to return to America. MGM issued a formal apology and swore that all the footage Tracy had shot would be scrubbed from the movie. The studio also canceled his 5-year deal, of which 3 years remained. Number 36. Tyrone Power was a drunken Santa. Matinee idol Tyrone Power once caused a small but dissenting scandal when he agreed to dress and perform as Santa Claus for a holiday party at Niven's house. Nervous about performing for a group of tiny tots, Niven showed up drunk and got progressively drunker, even as kids, including a young Candace Bergen, sat on his lap. Niven also said at least one child complained about Santa's pungent breath. Number 35. Mae West goes to prison for a Broadway sex show. Mae West is one of the silver screen's most iconic figures, but her career was submerged in scandal. West first gained notoriety in 1927 when she wrote and starred in a play titled Sex on Broadway. Progressive for its time, Sex was considered indecent, despite the fact that it featured no nudity or sex. At the conclusion of one performance, West went backstage and was met by the New York Police Department's Vice Squad. Number 34. Mary Astor's Dirty Diary. Long before a list of Lindsay Lohan's A-list conquests was leaked to the tabloids, another former child star shocked the American public with a scandalous kiss and tell all. As a teen, Mary Astor started out as a silent movie star. The Maltese Falcon actress underwent a bitter divorce some 2 years later. In the ensuing custody battle for her daughter, Astor's ex and his lawyers made continued references to a diary, which supposedly contained detailed graphic accounts of the actress's numerous affairs. But don't expect to read a 30-era's 50 Shades of Grey anytime soon. Once the document has been compromised as evidence, a judge ordered Astor's infamous journal to be destroyed. Number 33. Unsolved murder of director William Desmond Taylor. Beginning his career behind the camera in 1915, Taylor helmed almost 60 silent features prior to his death on February 1, 1922, and kept himself even busier by appearing as an actor in almost 30 productions. With his star firmly on the rise in both respects, shockwaves were sent through the industry when he was discovered in his home with a bullet in his back at the age of only 49. The murder of Taylor became a nationwide scandal and proof to the nation's moralists of Hollywood's depravity. 2 of the actresses linked to Taylor got caught up in the scandal and saw their film careers flounder following the murder. Comedian Mabel Normand had been linked romantically with Taylor, but was sent to a sanitarium to recover from tuberculosis and later died. While she was away, Mary Miles Minter, a teenager, became a star in Taylor's silent films and fell in love with him. Charlotte Shelby, Minter's mother, disapproved of the budding relationship. After his murder, a love note to Taylor from Minter was found in his home, along with her nightgown in the bedroom. Other damning facts came to light. Minter had once tried to shoot herself with the same type of gun used in Taylor's murder. Furthermore, Shelby had previously threatened the life of another director who had made a pass at her daughter. And to top it off, Shelby's alibi witness received suspiciously large sums of money after the murder. Still, no one was ever prosecuted for Taylor's death, and the case remains officially unsolved. Many years later, in Minter's unpublished autobiography, she admitted that she and her mother were at Taylor's bungalow the night of the killing. Famous director King Vidor told People that Minter had ambiguously admitted that her mother had killed Taylor after finding her daughter at Taylor's home. Number 32. The Tragic Tale of Wallace Reed. Wally was known professionally as the quintessential All-American who could play action roles as well as romantic leads. Because of his success at the box office, the press had dubbed him the King of Paramount. His wife, Dorothy Davenport, was a former juvenile star who retired from acting full-time when they married. Wallace Reed couldn't have known it at the time, but by the time he and his family moved into their new home in 1920, the seeds of his destruction had been sown. Just a year and a half earlier, he had suffered a head injury while filming The Valley of the Giants in Oregon. A physician on the set administered morphine so that he could keep filming. The treatment continued for a while when he returned to Hollywood, but when his access to drugs was cut off, Wally found a ready supply from drug dealers in the lucrative black market that serviced actors and other studio employees. Wally also began drinking heavily and hosted wild, all-night parties at his new house in Hacienda Park. At first, he hid his addiction from Dorothy, but she found out in 1921. By then, he was in the throes of full-blown addiction. She watched helplessly as the abuse took its toll, first on his career and then on his health. Wallace Reed epitomized the all-American image the studio sought to project, the antithesis of an Arbuckle, an image shattered when the public learned of the actor's morphine habit. The studio tried to keep Reed's struggles out of the papers, but then Reed's wife checked him into a sanitarium and went public. He died on January 18, 1923 from complications of his addiction. Number 31. Florence Henderson and Barry Williams dated during the Brady Bunch. Sometimes the truth of a scandal is that there isn't much of a scandal to begin with. While on the set of the Brady Bunch, Barry Williams, who played eldest son Greg, developed a crush on Florence Henderson, who played his stepmother. The rumor was that they had an affair on set, but the truth is much more mundane. Williams, who was 16 at the time, did have a crush on Henderson, who was 36, and he managed to nab a dinner alone with her. They had a good time and ended the night with the innocent peck on the cheek. Nothing to see here. Number 30. Pola Negri lost her mind at a funeral. Rudolph Valentino was an Italian actor who thrived in 1920s Hollywood, and he died unexpectedly at age 31. At his funeral, which was attended by thousands, actress Pola Negri put on quite a show. After loudly announcing that she was Valentino's secret fiancé, she saw fit to dramatically faint twice, once in front of a flower display that spelled out her name that she had purchased for the funeral. Number 29. Greta Garbo and Marlene Dietrich's alleged affair. In the golden age of Hollywood, there weren't two leading ladies more famous than Greta Garbo and Marlene Dietrich. For many years in Hollywood, there were rumors swirling that Garbo and Dietrich had a secret affair together. Both actresses strongly denied this claim, but there are some suspicious holes in their story. For one, the two women claim to have never met one another, but years earlier, they actually starred in a German silent film together. Number 28. Joan Bennett's jealous husband. Joan Bennett was once a high-profile leading lady in some of classic Hollywood's biggest films, including Little Women. In 1940, she married movie producer Walter Wagner, which ended up being a huge mistake for the actress. In December of 1951, Wagner shot Bennett's agent Jennings Lang. Suspecting an affair between the two, Wagner shot Lang in a moment of jealousy after seeing him and Bennett talking. Lang survived the gunshot, and Wagner only served a few months for the crime. Bennett's reputation was forever tarnished, and her career never fully recovered from the scandal. Number 27. Frances Farmer's forced hospitalization. Notorious for her drunken exploits and various stints at mental health facilities, Frances Farmer was subjected to a slew of dark rumors, but here's the truth about her story. In early mid-century America, few movie stars were as famous as Frances Farmer. From 1936 to 1958, the actress appeared in 15 films alongside stars like Bing Crosby and Cary Grant, and she was known as much for her tumultuous private life as she was for her roles. At the height of her career, Farmer was notoriously institutionalized, where legend had it that the star was lobotomized. Though her family later disputed the claim, the rumor spawned a slew of books and movies that focused on the gruesome surgery. Indeed, despite her star-studded career, Farmer's mental health struggles became the center of her legacy in a society obsessed with sensationalism. This is the true story of Frances Farmer, the actress whose battle with depression became an urban legend. Number 26. Leni Riefenstahl's visit to Hollywood. Leni Riefenstahl is the German writer, producer, and director that we have to blame for Triumph of the Will, the 1935 Nazi propaganda movie that chronicled the rise of Hitler. In an attempt to increase her notoriety as a filmmaker, she made a trip to the United States in 1938. Almost no one in Hollywood gave her a warm reception, and she only managed to snag an audience with a gossip columnist and Walt Disney, who made it clear he had no intention of promoting her latest work, Olympia. She later returned to Germany complaining of the cool reception she had gotten from the industry. Number 25. Joan Crawford's daughter accused her of abuse. When Joan Crawford's daughter, Christina, was an adult, she published a shocking memoir called Mommy Dearest, about the alleged physical and emotional abuse she suffered at the hands of her starlet mother. While someone who knew Crawford defended her from the allegations, others said they were not surprised by what they read. While these accusations could never be definitively proven, Christina received nothing in Crawford's will when she died. Number 24. Sandra Dee struggled with anorexia. Sandra Dee is probably most well known for her titular role in the movie Gidget, and like many actresses at the time, she was pressured by a movie studio to stay thin. This pressure would eventually develop into a full-blown eating disorder and a lifetime struggle with pills. When she was 41, she withdrew completely from Hollywood and became a recluse. This made her depression, anorexia, and alcoholism much worse. She died in 2005 when she was 62 from complications of kidney disease. Number 23. Chuck Berry's voyeurism. When it came to sex and drugs, rock and roll legend Chuck Berry rang all the bells, and then some. Following 2 trips to the Slammer, first at the height of his fame in the early 1960s for transporting a 14-year-old girl across state lines for sex, and again in 1979 for tax evasion, Berry was busted over a 1990 drug raid on his estate in Wentzville, Missouri. Although authorities suspected him of transporting huge loads of cocaine in his guitar case as part of a multi-million-dollar drug operation, the search only turned up about 2 ounces of pot, some hashish, 2 rifles and a shotgun, as well as more than $122,000 in cash. But the cops also found a huge stash of pornography, including dozens of videotapes, trays of photographic slides and books, some of which appeared to show underage girls. The seizure of Berry's porn collection, however, led to a scandalous 1993 report in the since-defunct Spy magazine that went way beyond the earlier scandals, revealing a penchant for sexual fetishes involving bodily excremations and a predilection for spying on women in bathrooms. The magazine described a homemade video in which Berry and an attractive blonde white woman both relieved themselves during a New Year's Eve romp in the bathroom of a hotel suite in Lake Tahoe, Nevada. The report also detailed how Berry allegedly installed hidden cameras in the women's restroom at the Southern Air restaurant in Wentzville after he bought it in 1987. One camera was evidently behind the toilet seat, according to Spy, while others captured aerial views of the toilet's contents during the seconds after the woman stood but before they flushed. The recordings were then reportedly painstakingly edited and compiled in a pair of toilet tapes that showed hundreds of women and girls in the act of relieving themselves. Sometimes the frame is frozen for a few seconds, lingering on moments that must have been considered particularly moving, Spy reported. In 1994, Berry settled for $830,000 in a class action lawsuit filed by dozens of women who claimed they had been taped using the bathroom, and also settled a similar suit filed by a former restaurant worker and another woman for $310,000. Number 22. Lana Turner and the Johnny Stompanato scandal. By the late 50s, Turner became involved with Johnny Stompanato, a mobster who was reportedly very possessive and violent. On April 4, 1958, the two had gotten into an intense fight while Turner's daughter Cheryl Crane was home. It was the night of Good Friday when the Hollywood star's daughter, Cheryl Crane, overheard her mother attempting to end the relationship once and for all from her bedroom. Stompanato became enraged and threatened to destroy Turner's face, as well as harm her mother and child. The fight escalated, and a frantic Crane ran downstairs, grabbing an 8-inch carving knife. The rest was a blur, according to Crane. At first, Crane thought she punched Stompanato in the stomach, hoping to stop him from striking her mother, but as he gurgled and choked, she realized he ran into her knife. "My heck, Cheryl, what have you done?" he gasped. Moments later, he was sprawled on the floor of her mother's all-pink bedroom. The 32-year-old bodyguard to mob boss Mickey Cohen was dead. The knife had penetrated his abdomen, sliced into one of his kidneys, striking a vertebrae and puncturing his aorta. Concerned for her mother's safety, Crane fatally wounded Stompanato. The death and subsequent trial became the talk of the town, with dozens of reporters swarming the court during the hearings. Both Turner and Crane were exonerated, but that didn't stop the rumors around Tinseltown. Number 21. Charlie Chaplin's Lolita Complex. Long before Leonardo DiCaprio was dating only models half his age, silent film actor Charlie Chaplin was busy wooing women way younger than him. He was married 4 times in total, and all of his wives were young, to say the least. In 1918, when he was 29, he married a 16-year-old teen named Mildred Harris. They were divorced by 1920. Then in 1924, he married 16-year-old Lita Gray, which only lasted 3 years. Basically, these marriages lasted just long enough for them to become legal adults. Gross. Chaplin took a little break from walking down the aisle for the next decade or so. Then in 1936, he wed actress Paulette Goddard, who was at least in her 20s, though he was already in his 40s by then. That one didn't stick either. The 4th time was apparently the charm. In 1943, when Chaplin was 53, he married an 18-year-old named Ona O'Neill. She was a legal adult, so that was a step in the right direction, although the age gap had progressed substantially by this point. The man was old enough to be her grandfather. They stayed married until his death in 1977. If that isn't scandalous enough for you, Chaplin was also banned from the U.S. in 1952 due to communist leanings and did not return until 1972 to collect an honorary Oscar. The tabloids must have loved him. Number 20. Mary Pickford, divorcee. After getting her big break on Broadway at age 15, Mary Pickford turned to film. She met actor Owen Moore while at Biograph, and the two married secretly in 1911 against the wishes of her mother. In 1916, she began an affair with Douglas Fairbanks. Pickford and Fairbanks managed to keep their affair secret for years, but Fairbanks' wife eventually found out and filed for divorce in 1918. Soon after, Pickford and Fairbanks formed United Artists. Pickford divorced Moore in 1920, and she married Fairbanks less than 4 weeks later. Instead of reacting in horror or anger to the scandal that it was, fans instead mobbed the couple, as they now considered Pickford and Fairbanks to be filmdom's greatest real-life romance, due to gossip publications turning the situation into a fairy tale rather than a scandalous act of infidelity. Number 19. Michael Jackson held his 9-month-old son out a window. Michael Jackson's most remembered scandals are the ones alleging child sex abuse, but people tend to gloss over the one that was huge in 2002, when he held his 9-month-old son out a window. He was apparently showing the baby to the crowd 4 stories below, but sparked extreme concern over the one-handed action. He later apologized, saying he could offer no excuses for what happened, and that "I got caught up in the excitement of the moment. I would never intentionally endanger the lives of my children." Number 18. Jack Ryan enjoyed being a total creep. Jack Ryan was most well known for making beloved toys like Barbie, but during the 1950s, he was more infamous for being Zsa Zsa Gabor's 6th husband. After he died, strange rumors began to circle about his more intimate habits. According to Scotty Bowers, Jack Ryan was kind of a major creep. He said that Ryan loved to invite women over to his room, scatter rose petals around, then shock the daylights out of them by having them discover him in a coffin while he was pleasuring himself. So yes, we can totally see why Zsa Zsa dumped this creeptastic dude. Number 17. Roman Polanski's Lolita complex. It's crazy enough that film director Roman Polanski's second wife, actress Sharon Tate, was tragically murdered by the Manson family in 1969, the subject of yet another Margot Robbie-Brad Pitt film, 2019's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. But Polanski then got wrapped up in a very sketchy 1977 saga involving the statutory rape of a 13-year-old female whom he plied with drugs. Although he admitted to having sex with the girl, Polanski insisted she was a willing participant. No one with a brain was buying that story, and Polanski was about to be sentenced in February 1978 when he fled to Europe. There have been several unsuccessful extradition attempts, the most recent in 2015, and so the story lingers on, and more stories continue to be created. As long as there will be beautiful people on our screens who are worshipped like royalty, and as long as people will continue to be people, celebrities will continue to do what they do and keep journalism afloat. Number 16. Bob Crane murder. Actor Bob Crane was savagely bludgeoned to death in Scottsdale, Arizona just 2 weeks before his 50th birthday, and the murder remains unsolved to this day. In the 1960s, actor Bob Crane became a household name seemingly overnight. Cast as the titular jokester in the popular sitcom Hogan's Heroes, his mischievous face and wisecracking antics on screen were cherished by millions. Then in 1978, those same viewers were baffled by the grisly scene of Bob Crane's death when he was found brutally murdered in his Scottsdale, Arizona apartment. Crane's shirtless body lay in a bed, and his face was nearly unrecognizable. An electric cord had been wrapped around his neck. And almost half a century, 5 books, and 3 investigations later, his killer remains elusive. There are a number of reasons why the public still craves information about Crane. First, the show is still on TV. Its World War II setting makes it timeless, and it never really ages.
Just because you're wearing my uniform doesn't mean that you're me.
Good. I was afraid this uniform might be contagious.
Secondly, Crane was a good-looking guy who played a hero who always had a wisecrack and always knew the right thing to do. Audiences loved him then and still do today. And third, and perhaps most compelling, is the nature of the investigation, which revealed salacious details about Crane's sex life and the fact that the murder is technically still unsolved. That Jekyll and Hyde disconnect between the affable leading man and the darkly sex-obsessed pornographer who not only made his own films but also performed in them. Number 15. Jane Fonda's controversial advocacy. In 1972, Fonda toured North Vietnam, where she spoke against U.S. military policy in the country. Through a series of radio broadcasts, Fonda appealed directly to American troops, asking them to consider their roles in the war. A recording of one of her messages played in the documentary reveals she begged military pilots to think seriously about their orders, claiming that the U.S. was intentionally targeting the dike system in North Vietnam, a strategy that would have created a risk of flooding and famine for the residents there. Washington disputed the charges and argued that it was already American policy to avoid harming civilians as much as possible, and such messages to the military did not win Fonda any friends in the government back home. But what shot her to infamy was an image that dogs her even now. During the tour, a photo was taken of Fonda sitting on an anti-aircraft gun in Hanoi, making it look as though she were aiming at American planes.
I will go to my grave regretting the fact that I was photographed sitting on an anti-aircraft gun. That is in the documentary at length.
The waves of outrage the photo prompted have never fully subsided. She earned the nickname Hanoi Jane, and lawmakers at the time suggested her actions were treasonous and worthy of prosecution. Number 14. Freddie Prinze. Freddie Prinze was only 19 years old when he got a chance to be a part of The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. As explained by Vulture, Prinze only spent 325 seconds performing on stage on December 6, 1973.
If you have money, they won't hurt you. They'll take you out for a drink with it. If you don't have money, they hit you. And my mother didn't want me to get hit, so she used to give me money, $1 a day for the muggers.
Just 9 months after that first appearance, he managed to become a name to reckon with in the entertainment industry. According to The Independent, Freddie Prinze's downward spiral involved a whole lot of alcohol and drugs, like cocaine. While he was definitely struggling, he didn't hurt others around him. The actor and comedian was on Quaaludes, which were prescribed to him by his doctor. Prinze's mom wrote that it made her cry when she found out her son was relying on prescription drugs day after day. Freddie Prinze was falling fast, and it looked unlikely that he would pay any heed to those close to him. According to Amo Mana, the comedian was so depressed that he decided to make phone calls to loved ones, a farewell of sorts. He was just 22 years old at the time. When his business manager, Marvin Snyder, got the call, he raced to get his friend and talk to him. Prinze was staying at the Beverly Hills Hotel Plaza, previously known as the Beverly Comstock Hotel. While Snyder did speak to Prinze at the hotel and tried to get him to change his decision, the comedian seemed to have made up his mind. He continued calling his closest friends as well as his mother. He told her, "Mom, I love you very much, but I can't go on. I need to find peace." He also called his ex-wife, Kathy Cochran, and told her he loved her and their child, Freddie Prinze Jr. But he said he was looking for peace and that he couldn't go on any longer. Still holding the phone, Prinze shot himself as Snyder tried to take the weapon away from him, asking him to think about his family and his toddler. Nothing made an impression, and before Snyder could do anything further, Prinze had hurt himself. He was rushed to the hospital, but he never regained consciousness, according to a piece by the New York Times. He reportedly died at the University of California, Los Angeles Medical Center 33 hours after the shooting. Number 13. Alfred Hitchcock's obsessions. Do consumers of art possess a mandate to separate that art from the artist? It's a difficult question, without a clear answer. Such a case can be made for the films of Alfred Hitchcock, an undeniably brilliant practitioner of the medium with a troubled personal history. It is no secret that Alfred Hitchcock loved to cast blonde, gorgeous women in his thrillers. Now, author Lawrence Leamer has dived into the lives of 8 leading ladies in the new book Hitchcock Blondes, the unforgettable women behind the legendary director's dark obsession. The famous Grace Kelly appears on the cover of the book because she was reportedly Hitchcock's favorite blonde. The women, while given a huge opportunity to star in some of the most iconic movies, were reportedly not always treated with respect on the set. He was often jealous of the men the women chose to date or sleep with, and Lerner believes that Hitchcock was in love with Ingrid Bergman in particular. Another leading lady that he put through hard times was Tippi Hedren. In 2016, she opened up about how Hitchcock sexually assaulted her and how he used live birds on the set of The Birds to punish her when she did not return his advances. Hitchcock also tortured Kim Novak by placing a plucked chicken upside down in her dressing room. When it came to his leading actresses, he was known to have walked a line between stringent and outright sadistic. And yet, the particular nature of Hitchcock's collaborations with these women continues to serve as a fodder for study and debate, despite the fact that the details of these relationships are more or less undisputed. With Ingrid Bergman, Grace Kelly, Eva Marie Saint, Kim Novak, and Lee, the director would veer between the courtly and the coarse, at one moment inviting them to dine with his wife at his house in Bel Air, the next peppering them with filthy jokes in his trailer. And at least one allegation indicates that his behavior may have moved from the volatility long associated with Hollywood directors into something we today would call abuse. In a 2016 memoir, Hedren says that Hitchcock sexually assaulted her twice while working on The Birds and Marnie, and that she experienced retaliation from him on set after she rebuffed him. Number 12, Clark Gable's secret child. Clark Gable, notorious for his womanizing as much as his acting, met actress Loretta Young on the set of Call of the Wild, during which they had an encounter that left her pregnant at the age of 23. Still married to his first of 5 wives at the time, Gable refused to admit parentage and had no interest in meeting his daughter with Young, who kept her child's parentage a secret for her whole life. It was only revealed in a posthumously published memoir who her daughter's father was. Young also eventually admitted their relationship was not consensual. Scandal wrapped in scandal. Was the illegitimate daughter of Clark Gable and Loretta Young a product of date rape? That's the claim made by Young's daughter-in-law, who said the actress revealed before she died that the tryst may not have been consensual. The glamorous movie star and devout Catholic was 23 years old when she began filming The Call of the Wild with Gable, a married Hollywood heartthrob. After learning she was pregnant, Young embarked on an elaborate ruse to conceal the baby, feigning illness and exhaustion for her absence from the public eye. Eventually, she returned to Tinseltown with an adopted daughter in tow, Judy. The scandalous story and secret birth was the talk of the town, but the truth did not come to light until Young herself revealed it in her memoirs released in 2000. Number 11, Rock Hudson's sexuality. It wasn't always easy for LGBTQ+ celebrities to come out into the spotlight. This was doubly true in old-school Hollywood, and it wasn't out of place for gay actors and actresses to enjoy full careers portraying characters in straight relationships. Rock Hudson was once such an actor, even going as far as to play Lothario in films such as 1971's Pretty Maids All in a Row. A-list hunk, suave rom-com star, and all-around Mr. America. He was the consummate movie star and matinee idol, says Griffin, a devastatingly handsome 6'4" Adonis with a gleam in his eye, a winning quality about him, and that indefinable something that makes a star. Rock Hudson's life as a gay man was a well-kept secret in Hollywood. However, stories about his life were often held over his head as a threat by those in the media. Hudson's HIV diagnosis in the 1980s was also kept secret, and the actor succumbed to complications in 1985. His death boosted awareness of the disease and kick-started fundraising efforts, but it also brought home the reality of gayness to audiences. If a macho figurehead such as Hudson could be gay, having convincingly wooed Day, Jane Wyman, and Elizabeth Taylor on screen, and going toe-to-toe with John Wayne in The Undefeated, then so could anyone. Number 10, Errol Flynn's bad boy behavior. Old Hollywood star Errol Flynn had a debonair facade, but it hid a disturbing dark side. After long days playing iconic heroes, Flynn spent his nights engaged in wild escapades that often left his name splashed across tabloid covers, and those were just the ones that made it to the press. After his untimely death, all of Flynn's dirty little secrets finally came out, making for an utterly jaw-dropping finish to a life filled with both tragedy and controversy. Hollywood bad boy Errol Flynn was an actor to whom drugs, women, and drinks were no stranger. However, we can also add controversy to this list, thanks to Flynn's alleged involvement with underage girls. Examples of this can be traced back to one of Flynn's co-stars, Beverly Odland, whose mother asserted that Flynn forced himself on her daughter. It was further alleged that the Adventures of Robin Hood star was a voyeur and had two-way mirrors installed in his mansion, including the bathrooms. Number 9, Judy Garland's incentivized substance use disorder. Stars like Judy Garland would often be forced to work long hours without a break. In order to facilitate this laborious practice, uppers would be given to pep up Garland. This also served a double purpose in keeping the actress's weight down for the silver screen. Then, it was sleeping pills to shut Garland down, only for the cycle to return the next day. Unfortunately, not enough attention was paid to the substance use disorder that Garland would develop as a result of this practice. Judy Garland was just 16 when she starred in her breakout role, 1939's The Wizard of Oz. At just 4 feet 11.5 inches, Garland had a cute girl-next-door charm that helped set her apart from her glamorous contemporaries like Elizabeth Taylor and Ava Gardner. But with success would come the need to maintain her youthful looks and thin frame. Pressures from Hollywood studio MGM that would fuel the legendary songstress's drug abuse and eventually led to her death. But Garland's drug habit was believed to be an effort to numb her inner insecurities, particularly regarding her weight. Told by studio executives she had to watch her figure, she would often go to extremes to lose any extra pounds. When she was filming 1950's Summer Stock, for example, Luft said she stopped eating altogether. She was reportedly just 80 pounds while making 1943's Presenting Lily Mars. Luft wrote that her entire life had been dominated by the constant pressure to be camera slim. Most of her teen and adult life, she had been on either Bezedrin or a diet or both, he wrote, explaining how Garland attempted to manage her weight. Unlike other actresses, she could not successfully camouflage extra weight, especially because she was dancing and singing in revealing costumes. Just 4 feet 11 inches, she could be underweight and still appear heavy or out of proportion on screen. Number 8. Elizabeth Taylor's love triangles. Elizabeth Taylor was the queen of scandal back in the day. Married 8 times, Taylor made headlines for years when she began seeing fellow actress and friend Debbie Reynolds' husband, Eddie Fisher, also an actor, after her third husband died in a plane crash in the late 1950s. Debbie Reynolds and Eddie Fisher had 2 children together, Star Wars Carrie Fisher being one of them, but they soon divorced, and Fisher was married to Taylor for 5 years, until Taylor began having another affair, this time with Richard Burton, whom she would end up marrying and divorcing twice. Quite the spicy love life. Though both Fisher and Taylor were vilified by the press at first, only Fisher's career was negatively affected by this notorious affair in the long term. Taylor and Reynolds continued on to A-list stardom and even made up eventually in 1966 because of a chance encounter on a cruise line. Number 7. The mysterious death of Natalie Wood. On a boat ride with actor and husband Robert Wagner, whom she married twice in 1957 and 1972, and fellow actor Christopher Walken, who she may or may not have been having an affair with, Wood drowned under very mysterious circumstances at the age of 43. No one has ever figured out exactly how she died. Initially ruled as an accidental drowning, the case was reopened in 2011 after the boat captain alleged that Wagner was responsible, though no one was ever charged and the case went cold. Wood's death certificate was amended in 2012, citing the cause as drowning and other undetermined factors. I sure would like to be a fly on the wall when Wagner and Walker get together, as surely one of them knows the answer to this mystery. Number 6. The mysterious death of Jean Harlow's husband. Note, the script of number 6 is exactly the same as number 7, The Mysterious Death of Natalie Wood, so I'm not rereading it. Number 5. Jerry Lee Lewis's Lolita Complex. Perhaps the wildest of rock and roll's early pioneers,
They settled down just before it rained. Some old man go.
Jerry Lee Lewis embodied an unruly mass of contradictions that manifested themselves on such hits as Whole Lotta Shakin' Going On, Great Balls of Fire, Breathless, and High School Confidential, shouting his lusty lyrics and pounding his piano like a man possessed. Lewis, affectionately known then and now as the Killer, balanced the sacred and the profane like nothing that had ever been heard in American popular music, establishing himself as a walking embodiment of American parents' darkest fears about this strange new music. But the world-class Wildman was a far more complex and sophisticated character than his early image would suggest. His volcanic performing style tended to overshadow his prodigious piano technique. Lewis was also a subtle and distinctive vocal stylist, singing bittersweet country ballads, raw blues workouts, Tin Pan Alley pop ditties, and fervent gospel numbers with the same level of conviction that he brought to his rock and roll tunes. In May 1958, Lewis's meteoric rise was derailed almost as quickly as it began, when it was revealed that the 21-year-old performer had quietly married his 13-year-old cousin Myra Gale Brown the previous December, and that his divorce to his previous wife had not been finalized at the time. The resulting scandal made Lewis an instant pariah. Radio stations stopped playing his records, and his performance fees nosedived. He would make many more fine records for Sun until his contract with the label expired in August 1963, but he remained almost entirely absent from the charts during that period. Number 4. Ingrid Bergman affair with Roberto Rossellini resulting in child. Say what you want regarding today's actors and influencers dating amongst themselves. None of them have chemistry to the marriages and affairs of many decades ago. Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez reunited and married. Every relationship the Kardashians have been in, not even those who have seen their marriages last a long time, have come close to one of the most internationally sought-after couples. At the height of her career, actress Ingrid Bergman had an affair with director Roberto Rossellini, and the two had a child together. In 1950, it was considered taboo and a clash of cultures to see two different figures together. The affair threatened to ruin their lives, but both Ingrid Bergman and Roberto Rossellini would put their love on camera in a series of films that are highly regarded today. It became obvious to onlookers that the couple, both of whom were married with children, were falling in love. The relationship bore a child, a son named Robin, 9 months after filming began, and it would follow later with twin daughters Isabella and Ingrid. They would divorce their spouses and marry each other, while the international press covered the romance that banished Ingrid from Hollywood as an immoral person and was even derided in her native Sweden. One U.S. senator even denounced her on the Senate floor as a public concubine. However, the two would move on with their love and collaborate on several more movies together. Number 3. Marilyn Monroe affair with JFK. In the early 1960s, Marilyn Monroe was one of the hottest starlets in Hollywood, and John Fitzgerald Kennedy was deemed by many as the most handsome president in U.S. history. Their paths crossed at public events, but a secretive hookup in Palm Springs, California in 1962 got the scandal ball rolling. Some say that after Kennedy ended their rumored affair, Monroe went into a downward spiral that ended in her suicide. Others still insist her death wasn't a suicide at all. JFK's relationship with sultry actress and model Marilyn Monroe has long been the subject of speculation, spurred by her iconic Happy Birthday performance for the Commander-in-Chief at a May 1962 Madison Square Garden fundraiser. A rare photo taken after the performance during a party at the home of movie executive Arthur Krim, which was not publicly released until 2010, is reportedly the only known image of Kennedy with Monroe. Rumors have persisted for decades of possible involvement or cover-up of either JFK or his brother Bobby Kennedy in the death of the iconic actress. J. Randy Taraborelli's biography, Jackie, Public-Private Secret, published in July 2023, revealed that Jackie was shocked to learn that Dr. Marianne Criss, the therapist she began seeing in the 1970s for her PTSD over JFK's assassination, had once treated Monroe. When Jackie confronted her, Taraborelli wrote, Dr. Criss said he felt no responsibility to inform her about any former patients in the same way she'd never reveal that she'd ever treated Jackie. Marianne asked, how is this relevant? To which Jackie responded, how is that not relevant? Number 2. Fatty Arbuckle and Death of Virginia Rape. Fatty Arbuckle, a silent film era performer at the height of his fame, is arrested in San Francisco for the rape and murder of aspiring actress Virginia Rape. Arbuckle was later acquitted by a jury, but the scandal essentially put an end to his career. Roscoe Conkling Arbuckle was born on March 24, 1887 in Smith Center, Kansas. He worked as a vaudeville performer and, starting in 1913, began appearing in Mack Sennett's Keystone Cops comedies. Arbuckle became known for his comedic pratfalls and pie throwing. In 1917, Arbuckle formed his own company and began writing and directing films, many of which starred his friend and fellow comedian Buster Keaton. In 1919, the heavyset actor signed a $1 million per year deal with Paramount Pictures, an extraordinary sum for the time. In early September 1921, Arbuckle went to San Francisco with 2 male friends for a short vacation and checked into the St. Francis Hotel. The men hosted a party in their suite during which a guest named Virginia Rape, who had been drinking, became ill. Rape, who was in her 20s, died several days later from peritonitis caused by a ruptured bladder. Maud Delmont, another guest at the party, claimed Arbuckle had raped Rape and injured her bladder. Arbuckle's arrest on September 11th by the San Francisco police soon generated a massive scandal. Arbuckle maintained his innocence, but he was lambasted in the press and the public. Unused to Hollywood scandal, boycotted his films. The potentially ambitious San Francisco district attorney was determined to prosecute Arbuckle, even though Delmont turned out to be a questionable witness with a criminal record of her own. Several other witnesses would later claim the prosecution had intimidated them into giving false testimony. After 2 mistrials, the jury in Arbuckle's third trial found him not guilty and even issued him an apology. Despite this favorable outcome for Arbuckle, the U.S. film industry nevertheless temporarily banned him. He subsequently attempted a comeback and even directed several films under the pseudonym William B. Goodrich, but his career never fully recovered and he struggled with alcoholism. Arbuckle died of heart failure at age 46 on June 29, 1933 in New York City. Number 1. The first trial of the century. Evelyn Nesbit began posing as a Gibson girl to help support her family after her father passed. She attracted the attention of architect Stanford White. White allegedly got Nesbit drunk on champagne and sexually assaulted her. Nesbit later met railroad and coal baron Harry Thaw, who wanted to marry her. Nesbit turned him down due to the belief that she was damaged, but Thaw eventually convinced Nesbit to tell him her story, and the two married. Thaw kept a secret hatred of White, and when the two men came into contact at a Madison Square Garden performance on June 25, 1906, Thaw fatally shot White. The trial that followed became the first ever trial of the century, as Nesbitt had to share the scandalous story of her assault, and lawyers convinced Thaw to claim he fired at White due to temporary insanity. After the jury found Thaw innocent due to insanity, the judge sentenced Thaw to confinement in a mental hospital until 1915. Nesbitt divorced Thaw shortly after his release. Thanks for tuning in to explore Hollywood's darkest secrets with us. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the notification bell for more scandalous revelations. And while you're here, why not check out our other fascinating videos? Stay tuned for more juicy gossip.